So what we're going to do now is just follow up on what we went through in the classroom. We're just going to do a cold walk around of the unit, look at all the features, get a little bit more in depth on some of the items. So starting up at the front, we're on the gooseneck. We have a ship's ladder going up to the gooseneck, another ship's ladder going to the upper work platform. During transport, the ladder here will be removed and it'll just strap to the ladder that's on the gooseneck. The top two sections of the ladder up top just get unpinned to bring it down below 13'6", so you don't hit any bridges. Next is we have the hook in for the standpipe. The standpipe running up. One of the things that has to be debated amongst you as the users is whether that is a reasonable hook-in location up at the roof level. It's at that height to the deck, just so it stays under 13'6" for travel, so you don't have to undo piping and stuff for travel. So it's a discussion whether there should be a removable extension piece up there to bring your hook into a better height. So something to discuss amongst ourselves. So hook in here. The first compartment will be the propane enclosure. And let's come up a couple at a time just so we can take a look at the valves and the regulators and everything up here. So on top of the tank, we have the fill valve, the level gauge, which we fill to 80% is by code, a relief valve, and then your actual outlet valve. And you want to open these slowly. That there's an excess flow valve built into these, and if you open it too quickly, the excess flow valve will slap closed as the product rushes by it and won't allow any more to go by when you go to do your training. To compensate for that, or if that does happen, close the valve all the way down, and it'll take a couple of minutes, but there's a spring in here. The pressure will equalize across the spring, and the spring will force the excess flow open again. You'll hear it chunk, and after it chunks, then you can go and open this up, but slowly. Just crack it, let the line equalize, and that'll put the propane in the lines. Okay.
And what was up here?
Up here we have our first stage regulator, which is going to take our pressure from our tank pressure, which could be anywhere from 60 to 110 psi, and drop it down to should be about 25 to 27 pounds. And these are push to test gauges, so you push on the silver button and you will get your reading on the gauge. At the moment we don't have the tanks open, but you should be seeing about 25, 27 pounds up there. When you release the button, it takes the pressure off the gauge so it doesn't get a memory. Next thing you're going to see on the outside up top is the exhaust fan, which is helping or working along with the gas detectors and the thermocouples to modulate temperature and gas levels inside the unit. It's fairly noisy when it's in operation, especially at high speed. So as the instructor, that your ear should get tuned that when you get up to that 15% LEL and the exhaust fan starts to speed up, or if you get to 500 degrees and the exhaust fan speeds up, you should be able to pick that up and know, okay, we're getting into the warning area now, so I'm either got to bring the temperature down or I got to bring the gas levels down. If we're building gas level in there, it's usually because they're doing a very effective attack on the fire, and we're just sort of bubbling off some raw gas inside the unit. So if you don't want to keep building it up to the 25 and causing a shutdown, the best thing to do at that point is just release the dead man and shut the fire off, because that'll stop the flow of the propane. The exhaust fan will pull that level of propane out of the unit, and you should start to hear the exhaust fan drop down to normal operating speed again, and then you can bring the fire up. It just prolongs how long you're going to be inside without having an emergency or nuisance shutdown when you're doing an attack. Okay. Just want to go through some of the componentry that you're dealing with in here. Not that we're expecting you or hoping that you'll ever start building these yourself, because that's our job. But from a troubleshooting point of view, or as with any unit, you know, somebody higher up the food chain comes out and starts asking questions, it's always good to have an informed answer. So these are basically all the gas controls for the rear fireplace, which includes the bilge fire, the rollover fire, and the flashover fire. So our mainline propane is coming in from up at the tanks where we've already reduced the pressure down to about 25, 27 pounds. Comes in and we have our second stage regulator, which is then going to drop it down somewhere in the 5 to 7 pounds range before it goes into the fires. We have a combustion air blower, which is going to be providing fresh air right to the seat of the fire where we're releasing the propane, because we always want to have a good propane to air mix so that we get a burn. If we didn't have the fresh air being put in, that if you were doing a good suppression or you create a lot of steam in there, you're taking the oxygen out of the mix, and so now you're going to have just raw bubbling propane. That's where we're going to be putting fresh air in right at the seat of the fire all the time. So that's what the combustion air blower does there. Our gas is going up through. Down here we have the pilot for the bilge fire. And basically this is an industrial boiler igniter. Okay? That what we build here is basically a big industrial boiler. You're going inside of a boiler and playing with the fire inside of the boiler. Okay? So we use an industrial boiler igniter. We're providing it with pilot air from this blower into the top of the pilot head. Off of the gas train, we're coming off with pilot gas, which is a very low pressure gas. We have another regulator here which is dropping it down to about 4 to 5 inches of gas pressure. There's 28 inches to a pound, so about a fifth of a pound of pressure of gas is coming in here. So now we have air going in, we have gas going in, and we have spark, and we're creating internal combustion and creating a standing flame. The flame itself is about 75,000 BTUs, so the same as what you would have from your home barbecue. If you ran a propane barbecue at home, they're about 50 or 60 to 75,000 BTU. So that's what ignites the main release of gas. Okay? That is the key to the whole system is establishing that pilot. And from a safety point of view, that we have 2 conformations. One is what's called a flame rod, which is a rod that sticks in right at where it's being ignited, and that sends a signal back to the burner management that yes, I have a flame established. And once the burner management gets that recognition, it tells the PLC up in the control room, yes, we have a pilot, now we can go to main flame. If we lose that pilot because somebody's a really rough, tough firefighter and puts the flame out, not that I'm mentioning anybody's name, that we lose that signal, it shuts the gas valves and we don't have any release of raw gas inside the unit. Okay. As well, we have a secondary pilot proving, which is a thermocouple which sits further out into the flame coming off the pilot and says, yes, we have a good established pilot flame there as well. So we have a dual sensing on the pilot flame. So that's our pilot for the bilge fire. Our main gas, once our pilot is proved and we go for, we push the dead man in and we go for main flame, that is going to open up the gas solenoid or gas control valve here. And this is our motor valve, which is going to allow us to dial in how much flame height over that 7 seconds. So as you hold that switch, this valve is actually turning and opening up a butterfly to allow more gas to go through to increase your flame height. Up top, we have the pilot for the flashover. So that's this unit up here, a little slightly different style, but same idea, has proving. So we establish the pilot flame, it gets onto a thermocouple, the thermocouple gets heated up, and that says, yes, we have a pilot flame, tells the PLC that you can go to main flame, and here is your main gas supply up top for the fire. and the flashover is on or it's off. There's no ramping it up or down. Okay. Curbside rear, we have the generator, which is locked because amazing how many generators disappear. And on that, it's on a tray, a sliding tray. In operation, the tray has to be pulled out because it's an air-cooled machine. So to operate the tray, there's a lever in the front corner. Pull on that, brings it in. Okay. This is being fed from the propane from the tanks up front through this regulator down into the machine. It could be run on gasoline if you had to take it home to run your fridge or whatever, but as with any piece of your equipment on this side, you have your dipstick for your daily inspection for oil. Everybody see that? Especially the ones that are standing way in the back, not. Okay. Dipstick on the far side. Probably just created a hazmat for you, but. Okay. Check your oil. Air cooled. Start key down here. You always want to make sure at the end of the day that the key is in the off position. If it's left in the start position, it will drain the battery down. So to start it up, the propane is on. Pull the choke. Okay. So two things, first off, from an instructional point of view, it is a little loud. So as the instructor, if you're trying to establish a scenario or do a debriefing of a scenario, you don't want to be doing it down here. You're going to set up your hot zone, cold zone anyway. Make sure your cold zone is somewhere where it's quiet, that you can have your discussion without having to fight over the noise of the generator. On this side, as we're standing here, you can see the extension platform, which we built onto this unit for being able to use the tripod over the hatch. And it basically just folds back onto the roof for transport. 6-dog door. I don't know how often you're running into them. Shipboard. Oh. Okay. So that's one of our entries into the interior, into the maze. So next we're going to go up to into the control room, and then up on the roof, and from there we'll go into the interior and take a look at the layout of the interior. So in the control room, on the forward wall, this is where we would have our nitrogen bottles stored. Room for one operational, one secondary bottle on the rack here. That's your smoke fluid for the smoke machine. There is a small fresh air fan for this room just to create some circulation. It's not going to keep you cool on a hot day, and it's not going to keep you warm on a cold day. On this wall, we have switches for exterior lights. That there's 2 LED scene lights on each side of the roof, provide illumination over the entry doors. They get run off of here. There's a room light up on the wall in here. And this cord here is the power coming from the generator. It feeds into here and then goes up into our main disconnect. This unit can also be run by shore power with that cable. In that case, you would disconnect the generator cable, plug in your shore power cable into here, and that would feed up into the main disconnect. We go through the disconnect, we've got power from the generator. Disconnect goes on, that's going to feed up to the breaker panel. Generally, I leave all the breakers on, unless I'm doing service on something. It's just one less thing to have to remember when you go to start up. So if we were doing the 7 deadly sins sheet for startup, opening up the propane tanks was number 1, starting the generator was number 2, turning this disconnect on is number 3. Then we would go over and turn our master control panel on. So turn the key on here, punch in our access code, LFTS, which I knew you already had memorized, but turn the power on to the smoke machine, which is just below you, and that will allow or start the heating process on the smoke machine, brings it up to 750 degrees. In front of the smoke machine, the white blower is for the smoke, helps propel the smoke into the burn room. And then on the wall, we have our gas train for the electrical panel. So same thing as we had in the back, the main gas is coming in, going through the 2nd stage regulator, which is going to drop it down 5 to 7 pounds, goes up, goes through the pilot gas train to the burner head. Once the pilot flame is proven, that will allow the PLC to, through our switches, to allow us to open up our main gas and into the electrical panel fire.
Is that a touch screen?
Yes, that's touchscreen. Yeah. It has the entry code or security code to turn the screen on or to get yourself into the thing, and then there's the daily span check screen, the parameter screen, the fire training screen are all in there. So we're up on the roof of the unit. It's a great grading deck, pretty good for as far as skid resistance. In the far front corner, we have the hook in for the standpipe. So you can spin a gated Y onto that. It is an NST connection that is there. The railings on this, I'm going to demonstrate one over here for transport. All they do is lift up and fold down in the middle. So if you're setting the unit up, you start at the front, folding railings out as you work your way to the back. When you're packing it up, you pack up from the back to the front, so you're always working within railings when you're up on the roof. For transport, there's some bungee cords just hanging up by the standpipe, and you just take a bungee cord, hook it into the grating across the railings just to keep them from bouncing as it's going down the highway. Come back, we have our ship's hatch, which is going to lead down into the entry compartment on the main level. So below the hatch, you have your ladder going down into the entry compartment. And on roof level, we have the old man extension, which that's what everybody's been calling it. Is so I guess I can use it. I don't know who else here can use it. But to aid going down, I don't know. Does everybody know the incident? Everybody's familiar with the incident?
We actually installed, had one fabricated.
Yeah,
installed in ours,
yeah.
Before that occurred.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So one of the questions out of CNIC Washington was whether this is adequate for height. And they want your feedback as to whether it should be, one rung higher than it is. So we have to, take a look at that when we're doing some training.
So the hatch won't lock up.
You've got the unfortunately, it locks up on the wrong side.
Is it right here? This pin system right here?
No, this is your locking on it. Would lock into that. So it's just whether it's going to be. Should be okay still if you're making entry from this side. Okay. Obviously for transport, then we'll close this up. We have to remove the old man ladder for transport. Remove the 2 pins. Ladder comes off. And then for the platform, 2-person operation. One on either end of the outside railing. And we'll lift this outside railing out of place. And that'll be your transport for the platform. And so, but with 2 people, one on either end, you're with these railings up, you're still in a safe zone. Okay. Any questions?
So for transport, that goes downstairs?
Downstairs, yeah. And then those 3 railings, you can either try to get them underneath the other folding railings or take them down as well. So in the rear compartment, or the rear area of the burn area, we have our bilge fire, pan on the floor, 2 elements in it. The first element here is going to be our main flame. When you're setting up, the pan has to be full of water because we're using water to spread the propane. Creates a more of a rolling, flammable liquid style. The rear element back here is the rollover flame. There's our combustion air coming in, and our pilot is hidden behind that cover on the floor. Up at the ceiling, we have our flashover setup. So that's going to shoot the flame across the ceiling. The rod here is part of the agent sensing as well, that if you do an indirect to do cooling, that as it sees the temperature variance in the air, it will dial the fire down.
Bilge plug. Bilge plug.
Yeah, that's the drain for the bilge. And these 2 troughs on the outside are for the agent sensor for the water. So they're picking up the attack water on either side and filtering it down through the water sensor. Depending on what pattern you're using, that's going to be picking up your water off that you're using to attack the bilge. On the wall that he's playing with right there, perfect job. Loosen that and then slide that panel. That panel leads into the entry compartment. And what that allows is for the heat from this fire to work its way into that laddering area. So if you have that open and the roof hatch is closed, you're going to build heat and smoke in that area. So when you pop the hatch on the roof, you're going to get the rush of heat and stuff coming up. We have 2 of the movable walls in position at the moment. A solid wall and a step through. So there's lots of ways we can set up as far as corridors or mazes with this. And part of what I was talking about in the classroom as the instructor protecting yourself, we have a lot of radiant heat coming off the bilge fire. So if I'm going to be the instructor, I'm going to want, and my students are going to be coming down through here to fight, I'm going to hide behind this wall panel with the pendant. So I can see the fire, I can see what my students are doing. I'll probably hang another wall panel on the back side, and I'll be in a little phone booth protected from the students and from the fire while I'm in here. One of the things we're playing with on this unit, because we've had some feedback from Kings Bay, is that they've been popping the panels off of the tracks. So I'm just using some beam clamps, which you can screw on up in the gap there, and that firms the panels up on the track. So I've got some more of those in a toolbox to install, but it's to take a look at which way you're going to set your maze up. And some of the times you may only have to move 1 or 2 panels to completely change the way the maze is. It depends what your scenario is going to be. Okay. On the front corner, we have the first of the gas detectors. And behind the cover, this little hole here, through that you would see there's an indicator light if the power's on. If it's in normal operation, you'll have a green light. If we've got to a high LEL, it'll go red in there. That you can do your span check and all that without taking the cover off, because you have access to the nipple on the end of the detector to put your span gas on. Okay. And above it here is the thermocouple for room temperature in this area. Of course, everybody knows what the trip temperatures are.
500, 5 and 7.
There we go. Must be lunchtime or something.
Where?
I'm in the entry compartment, coming down from the hatch on the roof, ladder down into here. Normally you'd have that 6-dog door closed, so you're coming down into a fairly tight enclosed environment and having to find the door and open the door before making entry into the fire area. So now we're into the forward end of the training compartment, and we have the switchboard fire. In this case, the fire is basically in about the top third of this switchboard panel and will be coming out of the top of the panel. It is an on or an off fire. There's no levels to the fire itself. In the bottom area of it, we have the agent sensor for water application. And same thing, that as you put water on, you'll have your extinguish times built in through your parameters and your soak time. Up top, if you can see it, there's a thermocouple up top, and that is again part of the automatic system. So as the temperature cools down from application, that will dial the fire down as well. In this wall here, We have our second of our gas detectors. So this one is sampling for unburnt fuel up in this part of the training area. And 15% of LEL will speed the fan up, 25% will shut the fire off. Right above it is the area temperature thermocouple for this room. At 500 degrees will increase the fan speed, 700 degrees will shut the fire off. And then we just have the movable walls we can set up to create obstacles in here.